week didn't quite go according to plan. So let's get to it. Hi everyone, I'm Sandy and welcome back to my channel. Today I have 1001 book countdown for you. Very excited as I'm approaching the end of the year. Some of those numbers are getting smaller and smaller for what I have left, and that just makes me so incredibly happy. If you're not familiar with 1001 book countdown, I will leave a card up here for you where you can go and check out the original video where I talk in a lot of detail about what I'm doing, but basically I'm reading books off of the 1001 books you must read before you die list, and it's just been a passion project of mine for a number of years, and I decided to start documenting everything on YouTube. So hopefully you give me a subscribe and consider sticking with me as I make my way through this journey, which will probably take me another 15 years. So, but for today, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and put up the numbers, which are 906 and 11. And 11 is my 2022 number. Every year at the beginning of the year, I pre-select 52 books that I focus on for the year and hope to make it through. That's my primary goal because the big number doesn't seem to move that fast. And I only have 11 left for this year. So rapidly approaching single digits, which is amazing, but yeah, it's still quite a bit. If you want a preview of what I'm toying with for 2023, it is available on my Goodreads, which you can go and is linked in the description below for you if you want to go and get information before anyone else. But so the books. Let's talk about the books. So the reason why I say the books didn't go quite according to plan is because in my head, I thought I would be able to finish more books than I did, and it just didn't happen. And some of that is because of the classics that I was reading that are just a little bit harder to read and just took me a lot longer. So the first book I read as a buddy read with Shelley Swearingen, and that book is The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. And so this particular book was written in 1920, and it was, I have notes on the back, it was Wharton's 12th novel. And this actually won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction in 1921. Edith Wharton has 6 books on the 1001 book countdown, and this is actually the second one I have read, the first one being The House of Mirth. I read it 3 years ago though, and I can tell you I don't remember much about it. So I did give it 3 stars on Goodreads, but I honestly couldn't tell you what happened in that particular book. This book was a really interesting read for sure. It took me a little bit of time to kind of get into it. It starts off a little strong and then kind of just petered out a little bit for me. You're slowly introduced to the main characters, or you're introduced to the main characters. I don't know if I'd necessarily call it slowly. One being Newton Archer, the other being a Countess Olenska. And Olenska makes this very grand appearance at the opera in a box, and everybody's fixated on her. But it is more the story of kind of high society in New York at this time, who is considered acceptable, who's not considered acceptable. Countess Olenska has, some controversial things that have in her past and in her current time that make her an interesting character for sure. There are some characters in here that ended up being quite a bit stronger and a little bit more devious than I kind of thought they would be. And they ended up being the people that I was like, wow, that's kind of impressive that she had that perception of what was really going on at the time, because you wouldn't have thought it with that particular character. It's kind of a story of love, of society, of prejudice, all of those things all combined, and all the way up to the end, you don't really know what's going to happen until that very last couple of pages. And so it was a book that I'm really glad I read. I wouldn't say that the prose was something that I was like, wow, I'm so enamored of this. I'm so in love with these characters. I'd say it was good. Was it great? I didn't consider it great. I did like it. I didn't think it was the best book, and I didn't think it was the worst book. I thought it was just, just kind of right down the middle. So, but The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton, we do get to count it, obviously, off of the countdown. We're going from 906 to 905, and it was on the 2022 list. So that number goes from 11 to 10. Yes, 11 to 10. I had to double check. But that was The Age of Innocence. And then the next book I have is For Victober, and I did this as a buddy read with Tiffany over at Beautiful Minutia. I don't know if she's quite finished it yet. I finished it a little early, and part of that is because part of it was because of the book. So let's just talk about the book real quick. And the book is, if I can put it on the right side, the book is A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. I was successful reading this book, finally successful reading this book. I tried before and had to put it aside. I now understand what the knitting on the front means, so that's really a really interesting cover on this particular book. But this book was originally written in 1859, and it is the 17th novel by Dickens. It was originally published as a serial, and you can definitely see that when I was reading it. I could see the points where it was like a big cliffhanger, a big stopping point that made you just want to go in and read more of it because you wanted to find out what happened next. That was very, very true in this particular book. Dickens actually has 10 books on the 1001 book countdown and is the author with the most books. I've read 3, A Christmas Carol. Last year for Victober, I read Bleak House, and then I have this one, A Tale of Two Cities. This book has some absolutely amazing characters in it, and I can't remember whose channel I saw it on, but someone had said that this book is easily spoilable, and I can definitely see why that would be the case, because the book in the third part picks up in a way that is so unexpected, and the twists and turns in that part are ones that I did not see coming, and really just made me want to keep reading that last part, which is also why I finished it about 3 days early, because I had to find out what happened. I needed to know the answer to the end of this book. And so that was masterful in this. This book does drag in places though, and it got a little just tedious to read in places. And that was really unfortunate. I will say that Dickens does a fantastic job of writing nefarious characters. One of my favorite characters in this was the Marquis. I won't tell you what happens to the Marquis, but there are some absolutely wonderful scenes that just show how horrible of a character he was, or how horrible of a person he was. And The Tale of Two Cities really does talk about this kind of like this Marquis who's this opulent, character, and then the people in the streets who are starving and can't afford to put a grave marker on their family's grave. Things like, it's just two very different edges of the city, and that comes across very, very well. The components I loved about it were the cliffhangers. You would get to a part and you're just like, okay, now I have to keep reading to find out what happens. It was absolutely amazing. There's characters I felt sorry for. There's characters I identified with. There's characters that I was like, who are you? Why are you doing this? But it turned out to be a really great read. I ended up giving it, I think, like 4 stars on Goodreads, which I think is probably good. I may reevaluate when I read more Dickens to see if I would up that later, but I was pleasantly surprised with this one. Right now, is it my favorite Dickens? I think with the 3 that I've read, it probably is the top, but I have several more to read of Dickens. But yeah, A Tale of Two Cities. This was my success story for the last couple of weeks for Victober. And with this book, we get to go from 905 to 904, and it was on my 2022 list. So we are going from 10 to 9. I am officially in single digits for the year. Amazing. Very happy about that. But yeah, this was a great success of the last couple of weeks. So why didn't it go as expected? Let me get my other, I'm not prepared because I'm just not prepared. The reason why this last couple of weeks did not go as expected is because I also had The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. And in my head, I thought I'll be able to read both A Tale of Two Cities and The Woman in White at the same time and just power through them over the last couple of weeks. In the end, that did not work. And the reason that did not work is the writing style was very similar between The Woman in White and A Tale of Two Cities. Some of the character names were somewhat similar. There's a Laura and a Lucy, and there was too much similarity that I was starting to get aspects of the story confused. There's a carriage ride in both of them, and it just was one of those things. I had to end up putting this one aside. I had hoped to finish this one. I really wanted to have 3 books, so I'd be at 8, and 8 over the next 2 months feels completely doable, and it just did not happen. And then I went into like this little bit of a reading slump over the last couple of days where I just didn't want to pick it up, and it's too bad. I really am excited to read this book. I'm hoping to pick it up over the weekend and still finish it for my October reading. This would be my last October read and the last book that's actually on my TBR for October, so it'd be great if I could finish it. But yeah, it just didn't quite go as expected. It is an interesting story, and I love the introduction of The Woman in White. I just couldn't read it at the same time of A Tale of Two Cities. I don't know, when you're trying to read books more than one book at a time, does that cause problems for you as a reader? Because it definitely did for me. But I'm excited, hopefully, to get to this one this week. And then the other book, I don't have any other books from the 1001 book countdown that I'm working on right now. I have a ton in November. You can see my TBR shelf is filled again because I put all my books back. And then I may have added another book for November. I don't know. Don't ask me. But the other book that over the weekend I'm playing with starting is How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu. This is not a 1001 book countdown book. It's just a book that was part of the Barnes & Noble Discover New Authors Prize. And it was the second book in the voting of everyone who voted for that for those books. So thank you to everyone who did. So I am still hoping to read this one. I'm hoping actually it's kind of a good one for a Halloween spooky kind of read. But that is the other one that I have going or that I'm thinking about picking up. I picked up a trashy romance novel yesterday because I was trying to get myself out of my little bit of a reading slump, and it worked for that book and then nothing else because I didn't read a single thing after I was done reading that one. So yeah, I'm hopeful, but it's not quite according to plan. It happens occasionally. Wish me luck over the next few days that I can finish my October TBR. That would be fantastic. I'm really having a hard time not picking up my November reads because there are so many books in there I'm just super excited about. But we'll get back to it, I promise. And as always, like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, everyone, thanks. Bye.